The Laughing River. There is a river, unnamed on most maps, that winds its way through a dense and nameless forest. To the casual observer, it might seem like any other stretch of water, its surface rippling gently as it carves a path through the trees. The water is clear, reflecting the canopy above, and its banks are lush with moss and wildflowers. But to those who have stood on its edge for too long, it is a place of dread. The river laughs. The sound starts faint, almost imperceptible, as though the wind brushing through the trees has taken on a peculiar rhythm. But soon it grows louder, sharper. The laughter is not joyful. It is mocking, piercing, a chorus of voices just out of reach. Some say it resembles the sound of a child's giggle. Others describe it as the manic, breathless laughter of someone on the verge of collapse. The truth is that the sound changes with every listener, worming its way into their mind and feeding on their fears. The Foundation first became aware of the river after reports from hikers who had ventured into the forest and emerged days later, hysterical and trembling. One man, mud-caked and babbling, claimed the river had spoken to him, not in words, but in the rhythm of its laughter. "It told me everything I already knew," he had whispered before collapsing into sobs. When pressed, he could say no more. A containment team was dispatched, their mission simple: observe and document. They were equipped with audio recording devices, thermal imaging cameras, and reinforced protective gear designed to shield against auditory anomalies. It was standard protocol. None of it worked. The team reported hearing the laughter before they even reached the river's banks. It seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once, threading through the forest like an unseen predator. One member of the team, Agent Morales, described the sound as a hook behind the eyes, pulling everything loose. By the time they reached the water, 2 members of the team were already displaying symptoms of distress. One was clutching his head, murmuring incoherently, while the other stood silent, his eyes fixed on the river. The report sent back to the Foundation headquarters was fragmented, almost illegible in parts. It spoke of strange phenomena: the water reflecting scenes that weren't there, the banks shifting as though alive, and the laughter, always the laughter, growing louder with each passing moment. The last entry ended abruptly with the words, "It's in my head." The team never returned. Subsequent investigations were more cautious. Drones were deployed, their cameras and sensors capturing footage of the river from a safe distance. The recordings revealed little of note, at least at first. The water flowed as any river might, its current steady, its banks unremarkable. But then came the sound. Even through the drones, the laughter was audible, a faint, distorted echo that seemed to creep into the recordings. Technicians who reviewed the footage reported headaches, unease, and a lingering sense of being watched. One described the laughter as a shadow in my ear, impossible to shake. Attempts to analyze the sound revealed nothing. No discernible pattern, no identifiable source. It was as though the river itself was alive, its currents the threads of some incomprehensible consciousness. One researcher theorized that the laughter wasn't a sound at all, but a psychological effect induced by prolonged exposure to the river. This theory held until the recordings were played for subjects in controlled environments, miles away from the site. The results were always the same: hysteria, paranoia, and in one case, death. The subject, a healthy 34-year-old man, had been exposed to the audio for no more than 5 minutes. He began laughing almost immediately, a quiet, nervous chuckle that quickly grew into a full-bodied cackle. His laughter turned ragged, desperate, and then, abruptly, he collapsed. Autopsy reports indicated cardiac arrest, though the coroner noted unusual neural activity moments before death, as though the brain had been overloaded. The river's effects were not confined to sound alone. Field reports spoke of an irresistible pull, a compulsion to approach the water. Those who lingered on the banks described a sensation of weightlessness, as though the ground itself were dissolving beneath them. Survivors often recounted vivid hallucinations, visions of loved ones calling to them from the water, faces forming in the ripples, their laughter mingling with the river's own. One particularly chilling account came from a ranger who had been tasked with cordoning off the area. He described seeing a woman in the water, her face serene, her laughter soft and inviting. She beckoned to him, and though he knew it was impossible, there had been no one else in the forest, he felt his feet moving toward the edge. It was only when his radio crackled to life, breaking the spell, that he realized he was waist deep in the river. The laughter was deafening. He was pulled from the water moments later by his partner. His boots were missing, and his skin was marked with strange branching patterns, as though veins of black ink had spread beneath the surface. Within hours, he began to laugh uncontrollably. He was sedated and transported to a nearby facility, where his condition deteriorated rapidly. By morning, he was gone. Efforts to contain the river have been met with limited success. Barriers were erected around the forest's perimeter, warning signs posted, and access strictly controlled. Still, the river claims victims. It seems to call to them, its laughter carried on the wind like a secret meant only for the lonely and the lost. Those who enter the forest are rarely seen again. On the rare occasion they are changed, hollowed, as though some essential part of them has been washed away. The Foundation has classified the river as Euclid, though there are whispers among the research team that this designation is insufficient. They speak of the river as though it were a living thing, a predator lying in wait. One researcher described it as an entity that feeds on joy, twisting it into despair. Another simply called it a trap. There is one final account, buried deep in the Foundation's archives, accessible only to those with the highest clearance. It speaks of an expedition undertaken decades ago, before the Foundation's involvement, when the river was still a local legend. A small group of villagers, armed with nothing but torches and resolve, had ventured into the forest to silence the demon river. They were never seen again. Years later, a tattered journal was found on the riverbank, its pages damp and smeared with mud. The entries were disjointed, frantic, detailing the group's descent into madness. One passage, scrawled in a trembling hand, read, "The river laughs because it knows. It knows what we are, what we fear, what we've done. It is not the water that drowns us. It is ourselves." The final page bore a single line, "We are the echo." The journal now resides in a secure vault, its contents deemed too dangerous for public dissemination. Yet even locked away, it seems to carry the river's curse. Those who read it speak of hearing faint laughter in the distance, a sound that lingers long after the pages are closed. The river remains, its waters flowing endlessly through the heart of the forest. To approach it is to invite madness. To hear its laughter is to confront the darkest corners of the mind. And yet, it is said that on certain nights, when the moon is high and the air is still, the laughter can be heard even beyond the forest's edge, carried on the wind like a secret no one should ever know.